The first EU-Arab League summit comes to a close in Egypt's resort city of Sharm el-Sheikh. Senegal's president claims early lead as opposition calls for patience. And Sudan's President Omar al-Bashir swears in a new prime minister as protests continue. This is Africa Live. A very warm welcome to you. I am Peninah Karibe. Ramanyang is in studio with us with a sneak peek of what's ahead in business news.
That's right, Peninah. Here's what's coming up a little later in the hour. Kenya and Iran are headed for diplomatic clash over tea export prices. We'll have the latest. And power supply in Zambia and Zimbabwe is threatened by declining water levels in the Karibe Dam. The details on those stories and lots more coming your way in the course of the hour. For now, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Peninah.
Thank you, Rama. President of the European Union, Donald Tusk, has called for unity in ensuring the protection of refugees. He also told the joint summit between the European Union and Arab League in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, that young people need to be empowered to be positive agents of change. The summit is seen as a starting point for the two regional bodies to boost cooperation on shared strategic priorities, including migration, security and climate change, economic development, the Palestinian question and the conflicts in Libya, Syria and Yemen also came up for discussion.
We must work together, countries of origin, transit and destination, in order to break the business model of smugglers and traffickers who lure people into dangerous journeys and feed modern-day slavery, to address the root causes of migration and displacement, to stop irregular migration and facilitate returns, readmission and reintegration, and also to ensure the protection of refugees and their rights in line with international law.
Let's stay with that story, and joining us live from Sharm el-Sheikh for more details is CGTN's Adel Makhrouri. Adel, great achievements indeed there. Tell us about the main resolutions and what impact we should expect.
There is almost nothing of the pressing issues in the Middle East that hasn't been spoken about. They discussed every single possible topic, some of which in details. The resolution clearly states specific approaches to several countries. However, it's not so different. So they stress in general on supporting political solutions in regional conflicts to boost the peace process between the Palestinians and the Israelis, pushing forward a two-state solution, to give independence to the Palestinians and to push all parties to sit together in direct talks. When it came to Syria, they stressed on the importance to reach a solution, both Europe and the Arab League, to work on reaching a lasting solution to condemn all forms of terrorism and measures taken against civilian measures of harm taken against civilians in general. When it came to Libya, they re-stressed on supporting the United Nations 2015 Khairat agreement to push forward for lasting talks between Libyan factions, support a unity government to take the country through a transition. And in Yemen, they urged all parties to step down violence, specifically at Al Hadida port, and to allow humanitarian assistance to flow continuously. So there isn't much new approaches towards these regional crises. These terms have been heard so many times from the Arab League and from the European Union itself. But what has been quite crucial for both organizations, the European Union and the League of Arab States, is that to create this sort of dialogue that will continue on a routine basis. So every 3 years, this summit will be taking place so that they can talk together. But when even they decided to talk, they understand there are many points of differences. Human rights was quite a topic that has irritated the Arab side and also has been a point for the EU to stress on in the entire region, to stating that human rights in general is a foundation for Europe to work with its partners.
What about migration, Adel? What roles will the European Union and Arab League each take to address
to be done in the Arab world, specifically in North Africa, where the flow of migrants is the highest, despite, of course, it has reached its 7 years low, this influx of migration through the Mediterranean. Yet they believe that sustainable development must be achieved in the country, specifically in North Africa. So they are discussing opportunities for economic relations. However, it will be left for each independent state from the Arab world and the European Union to discuss how exactly they will proceed in that regard. There are talks about Egypt taking a stepped-up approach and taking more of a regional role in the Mediterranean to help migration boats leaving Africa to go back to Africa, and therefore does no longer become a European responsibility. But that has not yet been translated into tangible action or a tangible plan that could be implemented soon. So this is just a preliminary round of talks about the concepts, the main concepts that Europe and the Arab world wants to work on. But how exactly that will happen, there seems to be further meetings. When I spoke to the spokesman of the presidency, he said that in the coming few days they will be discussing more of the Egyptian role specifically toward migration.
All right, Adel Mahroui live in Sharm el-Sheikh. Many thanks, Adel. Senegal's Prime Minister Mohamed Dion says that President Macky Sall is on course for a first-round win after Sunday's elections. Dion says that preliminary results compiled so far show Sall being well ahead and projects a victory of at least 57% of the vote.
By compiling the results from the local authorities of Senegal today, we can expect a minimum of 57% for the candidate, President Macky Sall. And I would like to congratulate, in the name of the people of Senegal, in the name of the great coalition of the presidential majority, the Benno Bokk Yakaar coalition, our candidate. And I am sure that as soon as tomorrow, he will go to work to continue this important work for our country on the path of emergence.
Il se mettra au travail pour continuer.
But opposition presidential candidates will hear none of that. Idrissa Seck and Ousmane Sonko have condemned Senegal's President Macky Sall for the outright announcement that he has won the election. Seck and Sonko have also accused foreign media of declaring a win for the incumbent before having all the results. They want voters to reject a declaration of victory for Sall.
We have come to say clearly and firmly that at this stage, there appears to be a second round, and the results that are already compiled will allow us to say so.
At the current stage of the vote and the tally, no candidate, I say clearly, no candidate, myself included, can proclaim themselves the winner of this presidential election. There is an established organization which assigns the responsibility of the proclamation of the provisional results at the National Commission and of the final results at the Constitutional Council.
Meanwhile, the head of the Electoral Observer Mission in Senegal, Elena Valenciano, says monitors found the process to be quite positive with very few incidents. It was not immediately clear how many of the country's 6.5 million registered voters turned out. The West African nation has long been viewed as the region's most stable democracy with peaceful transitions of power since 1960.
Amongst the polling stations that were observed by our mission, the general view from our monitors is quite positive with regards to the control of the administration, voters, as well as the performance of the administrators and the voters' ability to choose to make their choice. It must also be noted that there was very little violence, very isolated incidents, which is very, very good news for these elections in Senegal.
Voters in Senegal presented themselves to designated polling stations across the country. There were over 6.6 million registered voters and just over 15,000 polling stations. CGTN's Beryl Orr now looks at the voting process in Senegal.
Every voter holds a voting card to prove his legal and valid identity. And after the on-site supervisor verifies the registration, the voters go to a table to collect the ballots of the 5 presidential candidates. And behind a black curtain, the decision is made.
I came very early to cast my vote, to fulfill my civic duty. As you can see, everything is going well. People line up in order and vote in turn. Here, we are civilized people.
And the 15,000 polling stations have instituted a system to avoid repeat voting. Every voter must dip their finger in red ink after casting their ballot.
You're here in the district of Peninah. People vote in peace for the leader of their choice. I am partisan to President Macky Sall. I'm sure he will be re-elected.
There are 5 presidential candidates in Senegal's presidential election, including the incumbent who has had the highest support in previous polls. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
Well, Kista Nyabwa is in the Senegalese capital of Dakar and joins us with the latest. Well, Kista, we're seeing some candidates like the president rushing to proclaim victory. What is the preliminary tally and position of the Electoral Commission so far?
Well, Peninah, thank you very much. So far, we have not received a preliminary tally. The electoral body has not spoken on this. Instead, there has been a briefing about half an hour ago by the court here in Dakar, the Constitutional Court, saying it is the only one mandated to give the final tally and asking members of the public to disregard any other tallies that do not come from it. This is because of the different reports that we have received. Last night, the Prime Minister also spoke about this and did say that the incumbent, Macky Sall, has a 57% lead and that there would be no need for a runoff. But the court says that it cannot, members of the public cannot confirm these numbers, cannot pay attention to these numbers, as it is the only one that will be giving the numbers, and the numbers are still streaming in. The court also said that it does expect to give the results by Thursday, but at the very latest on Friday. So it does say that it will be giving final tallies, final numbers on that day, and that up until then, really, it is all up in the air and nobody can say for sure what exactly which candidate has. Peninah.
All right, well, Kista Nyabwa live in Dakar. Many thanks. This is Africa Live, coming up after the break. We stay with elections and get the latest from Nigeria. And Sudan President Omar al-Bashir swears in a new prime minister.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. About to get out, go there and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca. Among the crowds in Cairo.
Who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile. Along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
My home country lies at the foot of Africa, the southernmost tip of our beautiful continent, and the unique point at which 2 great oceans meet. Now on a clear day in Cape Town, you can just make out Robben Island, a place where Nelson Mandela was jailed for so long. South Africa has changed so much in the years since then, but it is this country's history that shaped me and took me into reporting. I'm inspired by Africa's men and women of courage. It's the everyday hero who brings out my passion. The creatives, the decision makers, the risk takers who are shaping a bright African future. I see them in Cape Town. I see them in the pulsating city of Johannesburg. I see them across the continent, and I know our time has come.
CGTN is a platform where African voices can speak for themselves and take their stories to the world. My name is Lindy Mtongana, and I'm a news anchor and reporter for CGTN. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Let's head to Nigeria now. President Muhammadu Buhari has taken an early lead with 1.3 million votes. His closest challenger, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, has 1.1 million votes. The result could change as more results are expected to be tallied overnight. Voting was extended to Sunday in several states to accommodate voters who were unable to vote on the election day due to late delivery of polling materials. CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam reports.
We are determined that the vote of every Nigerian is important and must count.
Nigeria's Electoral Commission's chairman, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, briefing journalists in the aftermath of Saturday's elections. Voting was meant to close in the afternoon of the election day, but that was not possible. The late delivery of voting materials and failure of electronic card readers meant voting could not hold in at least 5 states and parts of Sokoto State. The problem was not restricted to far-flanked states. In polling units like this one in the outskirts of the capital Abuja, voting went on for several hours past official polling hours. We were told thousands were still unable to cast their ballots here.
The Commission acknowledges that there were places where personnel and materials did not arrive on time, resulting in delays in opening of polls. We responded by extending the voting period to compensate for the loss of time.
The election was also characterized by violence in many places. Polling stations were attacked and several people killed. An official death toll is being awaited, but civil society groups say dozens were killed, among them a polling official.
We are similarly aware of the incidents of intimidation, abduction, hostage-taking, and violence unleashed on election officials in some states, notably Akwa Ibom, and the burning down of a vehicle conveying materials used for the election yesterday in the Kina local government area of Kogi State. Some Youth Corps members serving as ad hoc staff were also attacked.
The presidential election is tightly contested by President Muhammadu Buhari and main opposition candidate and former Vice President Atiku Abubakar. Despite all the hurdles, the Commission says announcement of the final results will not be delayed. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Election observers are giving a positive initial assessment of Nigeria's delayed presidential election. The African Union noted the calm political climate and called for more calm as votes are counted.
The 2019 elections took place in a generally peaceful environment. The mission notes the destruction of election materials, including over 4,000 smart card readers, ballot boxes, and voter registers in certain parts of the country, impacted on the timely conduct of the elections. The mission is very much impressed by the resilience, patience, and patriotism demonstrated by Nigerians before and during the elections.
The younger generation is influencing the presidential race in Nigeria on two fronts. Candidates are depending a lot more on them to win, and this election has seen a lot more young candidates vying. CGTN's Laura Walubengo reports.
Young voters could make or break this year's elections. In Nigeria, 51% of voters are under the age of 35. President Buhari and opposition leader Atiku Abubakar were both vying for the youth vote. The younger generation is more rational when choosing their next leader.
Younger Nigerians are much more focused on things like competence, ability to deliver, than they are with the ethnic group or the religious group to which people are affiliated. And this gives hope for the future, because for too long, our politics have been centered on ethnic and religious identities. It's the young generation that will provide the leadership for that change.
Besides voting, younger citizens are running for office. Youth candidacy rose from 6% to 27%. In 2018, Buhari lowered the minimum age of the president from 40 to 35. The bill followed a 10-year campaign with the hashtag "Not Too Young to Run."
As young people, we're trying to disrupt our politics. We are the new breed. By 2023, we're going to have a new breed of politicians who are competent, who are capable, who have fresh ideas, who bring innovation to the table. But the only way that this can happen, the only way that we can disrupt the old nature of our politics is for young people to come out and participate, to come out and vote on election day, to join a political party.
The current cohort of politicians is aging, and many seek to give the youth a greater voice.
These young people still believe that there is the need for intergenerational dialogue. So we don't want to limit ourselves to say we want only young people in government. We need a mix: innovation, vibrancy, less bias, more willingness to try new things and see how we try new solutions that can help develop our country.
There are over 84 million registered voters in Nigeria. In this election, 14 million were young adults voting for the first time. Youth voters are a rising power, and they are shifting the political debate online. Laura Walubengo, CGTN.
CGTN's Robert Nagile is monitoring these developments from Lagos, and he joins us live from there. Robert, what are the preliminary results so far?
Well, here's what we know as of this particular moment. Now, of the results already declared by the Electoral Commission, incumbent President Muhammadu Buhari and his close challenger, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, have both crossed the million mark. Now, by the time the results were being released at about 4:30 p.m. local time, President Muhammadu Buhari had about 1.3 million votes received, while Atiku Abubakar had about 1.1 million votes. Then the gap was about 144 or so odd votes. I beg your pardon, 144,000 or so votes. But we understand that those figures have now changed as we speak. The Electoral Commission is now updating the country with results received from 2 other states. So that's where we are at this particular moment. But that gap increasing ever so slightly ever since the Electoral Commission began giving out the results. Peninah?
And Robert, is there any indication of how soon we can get the final results?
Well, not at this particular moment, Peninah. The results are basically what you can call trickling in to the center in Abuja, where they're being declared by the Electoral Commission. Part of the reason is because on voting day, that was Saturday, when Nigerians went to vote, there were quite a few delays for a number of reasons. Those delays between 3 and 5 hours. In fact, we even had some polling stations carrying out the voting exercise on Sunday, more than 24 hours after the voting exercise was supposed to have begun. So ostensibly, those are some of the reasons for the delays. We know that in some areas, River State, in Lagos as well, there were some cancellations as a result of violence. So, but in the early hours of Tuesday morning, we expect to see more results coming in thick and fast. It is believed that by then, the collation of results at both state and local levels will have been completed and sent to Abuja. So we expect to see the results being declared really, really fast. But that's the situation at this particular moment. However, a lot of people on the ground believe that at some point on Tuesday towards the afternoon, we should begin to have a really good idea, a good indication as to who will win this election. Peninah.
All right, Robert, thank you for that update. Robert Nagila live in Lagos. On to Algeria now, where several people have been arrested following Sunday's protests that rocked the capital, Algiers. The protesters were marching against President Abdulaziz Bouteflika's plans to vie for a 5th term in office. At the same time, more calls are being made to authorities to abandon plans for the 82-year-old president to extend his rule. Opponents allege that he is not fit to continue leading. Bouteflika has not addressed the issue directly. In Sudan, President Omar al-Bashir al-Bashir has sworn in a new prime minister in what is seen as efforts to end weeks of protests. The new premier, Mohammed Tahir Ayla, is a former governor of agricultural state of Jazeera. President al-Bashir declared a state of emergency last week to last for a year. He has also dissolved the government as he works on bringing on board technocrats to end an economic crisis.
Within the government framework, it's possible to take time before appointing the most competent person. The principle of appointment is based on competence. I assure you of my support and that of my government as you discharge your duties.
Hopefully, we will continue in providing what is required in Sudan. We promise to promote life issues and provide livelihoods. We also hope to provide opportunities for our young people, which we need to realize hopes for our homeland.
In South Sudan, President Salva Kiir is scheduled to start a countrywide campaign to rally support for the implementation of a peace deal he signed with opposition groups last year. The peace agreement provides for a formation of a unity government in May this year. CGTN's Patrick Oyek reports.
President Salva Kiir's tour starts in the Bahar Ghazal region in the northwestern part of the country. He is expected to travel by road and will be making stopovers in towns and other locations on his way. The peace agreement dictates that South Sudan's former rival groups form a unity government in 2 months' time. The parties to the agreement say representatives from all groups are now in South Sudan's capital to make preparation to form a new government. President Kiir's administration says for the peace deal implementation to succeed, it should be owned by the South Sudanese people.
The president will implore citizens to begin to heal their differences, end all forms of communal violence, and consolidate local peace.
South Sudan says it still needs more than $290 million to complete preparation to form a unity government, but many international donors say they would like to see more commitment from the peace parties before injecting more money into the process. The government says it wants each South Sudanese civil servant to forego a one-day salary for the next 4 months to fund the peace deal. President Kiir hopes his tour of the country will help get support for the peace deal implementation. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
You're watching breaking news on CGTN. Welcome to the world today on CGTN.
Let's recap our top stories at this hour. The first League of Arab States and the European Union summit has concluded in the Egyptian resort city of Sharm el-Sheikh. Leaders from both regions have agreed to work on peaceful solutions for the conflicts in Palestine, Syria, Yemen and Libya. Senegal's Prime Minister Mohamed Dionne says that President Macky Sall is on course for a first-round win after Sunday's elections. Dionne says that preliminary results compiled so far show Sall being well ahead and projects a victory of at least 57% of the vote. But opposition presidential candidates Idrissa Seck and Ousmane Sonko have condemned the announcement. They have also accused foreign media of declaring a win for the incumbent before having all the results. In Nigeria, election observers have given a positive initial assessment of the delayed presidential election. The African Union noted the calm political climate and called for more calm as votes are counted. Voting took place on Saturday in all of Nigeria's 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory. Final results have not yet been announced. And Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir has sworn in a new prime minister in what is seen as efforts to end weeks of protests. The new premier, Mohamed Tahir Ayla, is the former governor of agricultural state of Jazeera. President al-Bashir declared a state of emergency last week to last for a year. He has also dissolved the government as he works on bringing on board technocrats to end an economic crisis. And that's a look at our top stories. It's time now to catch up with the day's business news, and for that we cross over to Rama.
Thank you very much, Peninah. Here's what's coming up in business. Kenya and Iran are headed for diplomatic clash over tea export prices. We'll have the latest. And power supply in Zambia and Zimbabwe is threatened by declining water levels in the Karibe Dam. Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN. Accra is my kind of city. That's because when I'm here, I feel like I'm back home in Lagos or Abidjan, two of the major cities I grew up in.
Business in Africa is high risk.
After about a decade covering business news on the continent, I've learned it's all about the high risk, but also the high returns and the high energy. You simply have to adjust in order to keep pace. When I started out as a journalist, my dream was to open people's minds to the different perspectives. From the CEO in the boardroom to the trader out in the street, we all have different stories. From Accra to Addis Ababa, from Cairo to Cape Town, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Here at CGTN, we realize that Africa is on the move, and it's moving fast, but we're moving right along with it. I'm Ucheo Koronkwo, and I'm a business anchor and reporter at CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back to the program. Now, a row is simmering between Kenya and Iran over export tea prices. Iran, you see, is a major buyer of Kenyan tea, and it has put caps on tea exports from the East African nation. In fact, Iran is now asking Kenya to sell tea at a minimum price of $3 a kilo. Kenyan tea, however, is currently selling at about $4 a kilo, and that in turn will attract much higher taxes according to the latest directive from Tehran. The new regulation by the Iranian government is expected to trigger a bit of a diplomatic tiff between the two countries. Iran, with a population of more than 80 million people, is one of Kenya's biggest single tea buyers, alongside countries like Pakistan. Kenyan tea quality ranks fairly highly compared to that from Sri Lanka and India. Iran imports roughly 200 million kilos of tea from Kenya every single year. On to the southern end of the continent, Zambia and Zimbabwe have cut the power generation at the Karibe hydroelectric power plants to around half of their installed capacity. Now, that reduction is coming as a direct result of the rapidly declining water levels at the world's biggest man-made reservoir. According to Zambia's state-owned ZESCO, both the Zambian and Zimbabwean sides have been restricted to about 500 megawatts each from the total capacities of about 1,000 megawatts on both sides of the border. The power dam's water capacity has fallen by about 43% from October last year. Karibe's hydropower station is Zambia's biggest single source of electricity with a capacity, installed generation capacity of 1,080 megawatts. On to East Africa. Rwanda has emerged as one of Africa's fastest growing economies in recent years. The East African nation is attracting a growing number of investors who want to set up shop in the country. A variety of government incentives are also getting the attention of a range of international firms. CGTN's Alexandria Majala has this story.
According to the International Monetary Fund, Rwanda has seen economic growth averaging more than 7% every year since 2000. Figures by Rwanda's Development Board show that 173 projects worth $2 billion had been established in the country by the beginning of 2019, boosted by major manufacturing and mining projects. Although Rwanda is a prime destination for business due to its stable political climate and the country's economic growth, there are still some challenges.
I would say in Rwanda, mostly what is easy is, for example, you can start a company quickly. Company registrations goes very fast. You can make agreements, commitments with the government on incentives. There are some incentives that can also help to the company to start. But also, so there are some special economic zones, for example, we already with the infrastructure, and that makes investment easier.
Initiatives such as the Kigali Special Economic Zone, which accommodates manufacturing companies dealing in essential imports, have also drawn international companies such as Volkswagen. The government gives investors access to plots at a subsidized rate, among other incentives.
The 31,000 jobs created in the economy is the estimate related to those investments. The second part is that it represents an increase in business activity and investment activity. That then produces tax revenue, which feeds education and upskilling, healthcare, all the things that the government funds, that supports as well. And then I think the third factor is that activity promotes more activity. And so when we get a level of investment, what it means is that our rate of investment is going to be increasing, and more investors then are encouraged to come.
Rwanda's economy is expected to grow by 7.8% in 2019, fueled by farming, mining, and construction. Over 2 decades after the 1994 genocide, Rwandan President Paul Kagame has been hailed for the economic recovery. Alexandria Majala for CGTN.
Let's up north now. Egypt is becoming a hub for natural gas production in the eastern Mediterranean, thanks to the latest natural gas discoveries like the massive Zohr gas field. It's one of the largest of its kind in the world. Most of the excavations in Egypt, however, have taken place within the Mediterranean Sea, but oil companies working in the country have announced that tests are indicating that enormous reserves can be found in other areas. Yasser Kim has all the details.
Developments are taking place quickly for Egypt in the natural gas industry. In 2 years, it has turned from an importer to an exporter of natural gas. That's owed to huge discoveries in the Mediterranean Sea, such as the Zohr and Noor gas fields, with reserves that exceed 90 trillion cubic feet. And the latest seismic tests have shown even more reserves in other areas.
Seismic tests show that the reserves are about 200 trillion cubic feet, not only in the East Mediterranean, but in the Red Sea and the Western Desert. This is logical because Libya is full of oil and Saudi Arabia has huge oil reserves, and we're in the middle. But why now? We've always had an abundance of natural resources. The difference is that the current officials now know how to encourage companies to invest and excavate in Egypt, and have offered them incentives that are based on a win-win situation.
In 2018, Egypt reopened its 2 LNG plants in Edfu and Damietta in a bid to become a regional hub for natural gas.
The two plants each can produce 1 billion cubic feet of LNG per day, so 2 billion for both is a huge quantity. Edfu and Damietta plants would liquefy gas imported from Israel and Cyprus and then re-export it for the profit.
Being self-sufficient, the government will save $2.5 billion worth of imported gas every year. Natural gas is seen as a major component of the latest economic growth, from 2.5% to 5% in 2018. A sign of the continuous growth in this sector is that this month, 6 major international oil companies have been awarded concessions in 15 new gas and oil fields around the country. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
On to West Africa, where the Abidjan Autonomous Port Canal has been officially inaugurated in the Ivorian commercial capital. Built by a Chinese firm, the canal is also known as the Vridi Canal. It will now enable the Port of Abidjan to dock new generation vessels, much larger ones as well, and improve the safety and security of navigation within the canal. It's estimated at around $250 million. That's the cost we're talking about. The widening and dredging of the canal is also a way for Ivorian authorities to demonstrate the port's ability to consolidate its position as a leading regional port. The new canal will also increase annual import, at least annual cargo capacity at the port of Abidjan by more than 15,000 tons.
This will enable the economic and trade ties between the two countries to steadily grow, explore new opportunities for cooperation in all areas, and also strengthen synergies between the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative and the Côte d'Ivoire Development Plan. China wants to carry on supporting Côte d'Ivoire on its way to emergence.
The restructuring of the Vridi Canal is a variable development instrument with high added value for the Ivorian government. It also serves as a tool to bring people closer together. This project consolidates the ties between Côte d'Ivoire and its partners across the sub-region and the world. It is the right moment to commend the excellent collaboration between Côte d'Ivoire and the People's Republic of China.
Right, then let's wrap up this segment with content for the Mobile World Congress. Huawei has unveiled its first foldable 5G smartphone at that event in Barcelona. Now, the Huawei Mate X, as it's known, takes the opposite approach of the Samsung Galaxy Fold. It places a foldable display on the outside of the device, not on the inside. CGTN's Filio Contrafuri reports from Barcelona.
There's been a lot of talk and hype about foldable phones, even ahead of this year's Mobile World Congress here in Barcelona. Huawei's launch of its 5G foldable phone called Mate X is heating up the competition to see who gets ahead in the smartphone advanced technology market. The Chinese tech giant claims Mate X is the world's fastest and slimmest 5G smartphone that can, for example, download a 1 GB movie in 3 seconds. It's a device that can fold into a slim 6.6-inch smartphone and unfold into an 8-inch tablet. Huawei said its engineers have been working for 3 years on this phone. The phone will be available in the middle of the year for a whopping price of about $2,600. Mate X is launched just days after Huawei's rival Samsung announced the Samsung Fold, a foldable device which will sell for close to $2,000. And while the phones are capturing the headlines, at least here in Barcelona, industry analysts and others are concerned about how these phones can be broadly available with such a high price tag. Now, a little earlier, I spoke with Huawei's head for consumer business in Western Europe, Walter G., who told me that he expects in the next 2 to 3 years, this device will become quite popular, so its price will go down dramatically. Filio Contrafuri, CGTN, Barcelona.
All right, then, I'll leave you there for the time being. Here's what's coming up at the top of the hour in global business. So we'll be looking at a looming crisis in South Africa's mining sector. AMCU's dispute with Sibanye-Stillwater has now expanded to rope in at least 14 other mining companies. How will this play out and what sort of damage should you expect? All the answers coming your way live from Johannesburg at 1800 GMT. See you then. Now, though, back to Peninah.
Thank you, Rama. You're watching Africa Live. Still ahead. The big winners at the Oscar Academy Awards.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
British royals Prince Harry and his wife Meghan Markle were all about the horses on Monday during their visit to Morocco. The royals visited an equine therapy program in the capital Rabat. The program is geared towards children with special needs. The couple also visited the Atlas Mountains. While there, they met with girls at a boarding school run by Education for All. They are scheduled to meet a member of the Moroccan royal family later during their visit. And staying in Morocco, the country's education system is facing a unique challenge. 2 out of 3 students are dropping out of public universities. As Total has more on how students are struggling with French is setting them back in school and in the job market.
Students are dropping out of Morocco's universities, all because of French. The country's education system teaches in Arabic until university. The change discourages many students.
The first year at the university is devoted to studying and learning French language. So grades are very low in the first year and some students are unable to keep up. They have no choice but to leave the university because of the French language.
Morocco is a former French colony and has a long history with the language. Following the country's independence, Arabic and Amzigh were instated as the country's official languages. A plan to broaden the teaching of French met heavy opposition in parliament. Members of the Islamist PJD party and the conservative Istiqlal party viewed the move as a betrayal.
The bill is calling for increased variety in languages, something that we support in our parliamentary group. It is absurd that we teach sciences in Arabic in our secondary schools, only for students to struggle with French once they attend university.
Morocco's education minister rolled out the use of French in some schools prior to the introduction of the bill. Proponents of the change note French is a language used in most official businesses. Even for jobs not requiring a degree, French is listed as a necessary skill. Graduates face an unemployment rate of 17%. With these many challenges, it remains to be seen if the French language can overcome cultural obstacles and make its way to the classrooms. Astatal, CGTN.
A glamorous night in Los Angeles as the 91st Academy Awards ceremony wrapped up. Road trip drama Green Book was crowned Best Picture. Mexican filmmaker Alfonso's performance as Freddie Mercury. Malek is the first Egyptian-American to win the Oscars Top Acting Prize. One of the biggest surprises of the night was in the Best Actress category. Olivia Colman won for her portrayal of Queen Anne in the Royal Rump, The Favourite, denying Glenn Close her first Oscar. Close remains the most nominated living actor without a win. She has been nominated 7 times. Still on the awards, Marvel superhero film Black Panther took home an Oscar for Best Costume Design on Sunday. Black Panther was 2018's top-grossing movie in the United States and Canada and the second highest worldwide with $1.3 billion in ticket sales. Released by Disney-owned Marvel, it was the first superhero film to feature a predominantly black cast. The movie was hailed for bringing African pride and beauty to a big screen adventure. It received 7 nominations in total.
Wow, this has been a long time coming. Marvel may have created the first black superhero, but through costume design, we turned him into an African king. It's been my life's honor to create costumes. Thank you to the Academy. Thank you for honoring African royalty and the empowered way women can look and lead on screen.
And in South Africa, a new wave of chili aficionados in Cape Town are attempting to grow the world's hottest chilies, known as the Super Hots. CGTN's Travis Andrews reports.
It's called the Carolina Reaper, and it's a chili so strong it's the current record holder for the hottest chili in the world. Well, that's at least for the time being. because the plant is part of a much broader movement of professional and backyard horticulturists and enthusiasts who are attempting to grow and harvest the super hots. A list of a dozen or more capsicums that are specially grown for their fiery heat. The Cape's balmy summertime conditions provide the ideal growing environment for these chilies, which may vary in size, color and shape, but they all hit with the same punch.
The super hot varieties, some people prefer certain varieties over others. Some of us have a very floral taste. It's just unadulterated heat, where others like the Reaper and the Brain strain have this nice sweet taste. There's no real heat in the beginning, and you think, this is not too bad, and then it's like the slow burn, and it just creeps up on you.
The Carolina Reaper is currently one of the most famous chilies in the world due to the public hype about its strength, and its bright red fruit, contrasted by its green plant, serves as a warning to all. The chilies are measured also in Scoville heat units, with the higher the number, the higher the heat. The ghost pepper coming in at number 2, and the 7-part douglas not far behind, but still one remains supreme.
The jalapeno for chili poppers, for example, is 10,000 Scoville units, whereby all the super hots, which the majority of what I grow are super hots, they're from 800,000 to 2.2 million.
And at 2.2 million Scovilles, the Reaper is not far off in heat from police-grade pepper spray. But enthusiasts are still not content with even that strength, and are attempting to create their own cultivars of designer super hot chilies by way of cross-pollination. Of course, there are certainly only few palates that are brave enough to withstand the heat of one of these super hot chilies. And for the rest, there are food markets, where Johnny Exberg hot sauces can be found. We have the largest selection of rare and exotic sauces produced from locally sourced super hots.
What we do is we taste the fresh pepper, the fresh chili first, and then we try to identify the natural flavors of that chili, and using fruit in combination with the chili, we create a flavor profile where you do get huge flavor complementing the huge heat.
Ultimately, the chilies and sauces are meant to complement the food, not destroy it, and it seems more and more Capetonians are finding a newfound taste and appreciation for their heat. But it's just a matter of time until the next world record holder gets discovered, and that might just be here in someone's backyard. That was Andrew, CGTN, Cape Town.
Let's move into sports. We begin with football.